This segment is brought to you by Buick. Exceptional by design. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Good Vibes. I'm Martin False. Debbie Cox DeNova is in the house.
Hey,
how you doing?
Good. How are you?
All right, so you look happy.
I'm happy.
All right. Today's topic, busting happiness blocks.
Yeah.
So anybody who's getting blocked from being happy needs to watch this program and write stuff down.
Yes.
All right, so I want to be happy, so tell me how to be happy.
Okay, so some of this stuff bears repeating because we have talked about the topic of happiness before. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you. I'm actually working on a book called Bulletproof Bliss. And so, what is challenging as a life coach is that people will come and they will have done everything that the world tells them that they should do in order to produce happiness in their lives, and it does the opposite. But because everybody is out facing, showing all the things that are good about their lives, especially on social media, they feel alone in the experience. So just so you know at home, if you are feeling dissatisfaction in your life and you are checking all the boxes, I'm here to show you exactly why that is the case and to let you know that you're not alone. You're absolutely not alone. I have conversations all the time. So this work comes from Arthur Brooks and Laura Santos, both of whom are happiness experts and professors. So if you want more on this information, those are the two to follow. And it bears repeating that just like food has macronutrients, right? We know that in order to have a well-balanced diet, we want a certain balance of proteins and fats and carbohydrates. Happiness also has its macronutrients. Do you remember this from that show? Do you remember the three?
I remember vaguely some of that.
Do you remember any of them?
It's too hard to remember everything you say, but I try to soak up a little bit.
Okay, so first let's just say that the world tells you that you're going to find happiness through power, money,
I remember all that.
Fame, right? And pleasure, right? So people, when they're coming to the table, they're like, okay, I want more money. If I have more money, I'm going to have, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to feel happier. If I have fame, if I have all of those things. But research actually shows that when you get those things, you are actually not happy. You're not even satisfied for very long. And what happens is that you end up on something called the hedonic treadmill, which we have talked about, where you are chasing more faster and faster. Okay.
And I told you one thing that makes me happy, which was off that beaten path.
What?
Simplicity.
Simplicity.
The bobcat.
Yes.
The tractor.
Yes, and we will talk about that because that's really important to note for yourself. So, okay, three things. Enjoyment. You remember? Satisfaction and meaning or purpose. Okay. So now let's break it down. Remember, enjoyment is different from pleasure. Pleasure actually happens in the more ancient limbic system. Okay. It's more animalistic. It's like, I need to get enough calories to survive. So like sugar cravings, I need sex to reproduce. And
that's serotonin and all that?
Well, actually for that is actually dopamine that is driving that. Okay. Right. So, and here's the problem is that in our society, a lot of things have been hijacked. A lot of our, our food system's hijacked. And one of the things that has hijacked our systems is that it is not natural for us as human beings to have consistently the availability of pleasure. Right. But we have phones, we have shopping, right at our fingers. We can Amazon things right to ourselves. We have multiple ways at this point to actually hit pleasure button over and over again. And the
you
dopamine
have too much pleasure, though, right?
Yes.
You got to have downs to enjoy the ups.
Yes. Okay. And you do remember the conversation. Okay. So here's the problem is that when you are actually seeking to fulfill your happiness needs through pleasure, so you're consistently going to the Netflix or the social media or seeking for power and pleasure and fame and money, what will happen is that you actually you end up burning out your dopamine receptors and end up having a harder time, we talked about this, actually experiencing that serotonin that is associated with true happiness.
Didn't you say that like people watch sex films all the time?
Yep.
That they get so used to it and they burn out their, I guess you said dopamine.
Yeah.
That when it's time for the real thing.
Right. And so that's a really good example because when we talk about pornography, right, that's pure pleasure. And pleasure, again, is in that limbic system. Now, enjoyment is an elevation of that. So it does have pleasure in it, right? But instead of happening in the limbic system, it actually happens in the prefrontal cortex. And it involves this formula, pleasure plus people plus memories. So again, you have all three of those and that constitutes enjoyment, which is a macronutrient of happiness. The second one is satisfaction. Now, here's the interesting thing about satisfaction is that you actually need unhappiness in order to have satisfaction. So you actually need unhappiness to have happiness. Okay, so people tend to think, when I'm happy, I'm never going to have any bad days. I'm not going to have it. No, you would actually die if you did not have unhappy feelings. Okay, they're necessary. They're good for us. So in satisfaction, if you have a purpose-driven struggle or even suffering, then you actually end up with satisfaction. We talked about this before. If you cheat on a test, you might be like, okay, good, I passed, but that's not satisfying as studying for it and getting through it on your own merits. And so it's like the bigger the struggle, the deeper the satisfaction on the other side. So find your purpose-driven struggle, because satisfaction is a macronutrient. And then the third one is purpose or meaning. Now, this is one that's difficult too, because what we're dealing with here is like, why am I here? So answer these questions for yourself. Why am I here? Right? What's the meaning of life? And which direction am I going? So people have to have a sense of this, like to zoom out on their life and be able to know why they're here and what they're doing, and have meaning and purpose in order to feel good and happy in life. You can actually go a little bit without the enjoyment and without the satisfaction, but if you don't have any purpose or meaning in life, you will actually deteriorate fast.
Let's do this, because we'll take a break. Somebody asked me the other day, what makes me happy? I said, the water. And they said, well, what you mean, like taking your boat out? I could take a pirogue on the water and still be as happy as if you take a boat.
Yeah, I love that. It doesn't take much, right?
The water's free.
Ooh, we should talk about that.
All right, okay, we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Don't block happiness. Get rid of somebody who's blocking your happiness. We'll be back. This segment was brought to you by Rouse's Markets. Feels like home. All right, we're back. I was thinking of the Beatles song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. What was that?
Mick Jagger.
Yeah, Mick Jagger.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Okay.
And the truth of the matter is, you can get satisfaction. You can't keep satisfaction. Right. That's the real problem, right?
And I'm thinking of this conversation we're having, and I honestly could live in a camper if it had a good air conditioner and it had a mattress. I could be just as happy as if I lived where I'm at now in the house. I have projects, and I love projects. That's what drives me. But I find people get in relationships where the other person has a different standard, and they drive that person to have their standard, and all of a sudden, train wreck.
Yeah, that can absolutely happen. Well, here's the thing, is that we all have our wants and our desires, right? What is true is that what we typically do is that we manage our wants. We have a big list of like bucket list of like all the things that we want to do, right? And the truth of the matter is that happiness is actually more of like, it's like a math problem. It's your wants divided by your haves. So the problem is that we don't manage our haves. And so what people do is they exponentially grow their haves, and the bigger your haves to your wants is actually going to determine your satisfaction. So this is an interesting thing that you may not have heard before. Well, so Arthur Brooks was saying that he had a friend who is super successful, right? And he said, you know what, as a measure of my own success, I know I'm going to be successful when I can go to the Mercedes dealership and pay for a Mercedes in cash. So he saved up, and at 32 years old, he was able to go to the lot, put down cash, and he got into his Mercedes, and he felt a level of satisfaction, but no more than maybe 45 seconds, because as he was pulling out of the dealership, he said to himself, I should have waited 6 more months and gotten a Ferrari, right? So that's how fast satisfaction goes. Like, we can get satisfaction. Keeping satisfaction is the part. And if you want to keep satisfaction, it's a matter of managing your wants. So Arthur Brooks actually suggests that you make a bucket list of things that you want, and then renounce your cravings for it. If you get it, great, but you actually say to yourself, I'm actually really happy with what I have. I would like these things, but you're sort of like releasing the attachment for it. So every year on his birthday, that's what he does. He renounces his cravings for the things that he wants, and that is what actually, so simplicity to your point, like not wanting or needing to have more, but actually being really grateful for the small stuff that you have actually does produce more happiness. So that's why you can see people in third world countries, right? If they are actually dialed into the gratitude of their life, they actually can be happier than someone who's living in a mansion and has more than enough money to do everything that they want to do. It's a matter of managing your wants. Now, if power, pleasure, fame, and money are not the things that we should be chasing, like society says, do you remember the 4 that we should be chasing?
Well, happiness is one.
Okay. So what creates that, though, for us?
Well, probably
X.
different people. Simplicity for me.
Do you remember the F's?
No, I don't.
Faith, family,
Yeah.
friends, and meaningful work.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
so
yeah.
faith. So
Now that you say it, I do remember.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So faith is and people will assign their own faith to this, but it's anything that's going to actually pull you into transcendence. Even if you're not a religious person, even walking for an hour a week in the forest, people zooming yourself out and actually
Right.
connecting to something larger is what we're talking about. Faith. Friends, you need to have what he says: real friends, not deal friends. Right? At least 2 people in your life who are true friends that you can turn to. You don't want to cut ties with your family, the ties that bond. Right? Like you really want not to let politics and things like that get in the way,
Right.
because that actually is equated to your happiness. If you take care of your actual family, that's going to help you. And then work needs to be meaningful. It actually has to have 2 characteristics, okay? You need to be able to actually have accomplishments and be rewarded by your merits, but then you also have to be contributing to your work for it actually to have some sort of meaning. Now, Mother Nature plays a trick on us, and she actually gives us these miswantings, like we go after the wrong things, right? So you just need to know that everybody is kind of wired that same way, and we have these annoying features of the mind where it's like we think certain things are going to make us happy, but then they don't by research standards, right? Like, oh, that's going to, and then number 2, you tend to compare. You set a reference point. So you could be doing objectively well, but as long as you have other people to compare to that are doing better, you can walk around very unhappy. Social media is the worst for this. Your mind gets used to stuff. So a hedonic adaptation. So immediately you're not getting the same hit of pleasure that you got in the very beginning. And then there's the impact bias. You assume that when good things happen, they're going to be big and they're going to last a long time, and they never are. So these are what she calls the rewirements to help you with that. You want to do social connection. Happy people, by all research standards, get face time with real people. They are socially connected beings. There's a bias called under-sociality, which is that we actually minimize in our own minds the importance of face-to-face contact with other people. So you need to override that, pick up the phone, actually talk to your friends. You cannot afford not to if you want to be happy. And then you want to be other-oriented. We tend to talk about self-care as the path. But people who are happy actually give more compliments, they volunteer, they contribute, they're other-oriented. The other thing is that you want to focus on your blessings. You want to write a gratitude list, maybe 3 to 5 things per day. If you do that for 2 weeks, it ups your happiness level.
Just as we close this show, I just want to give a hint to everybody who's listening to this. You know what makes me happy?
What?
Being able to come to work and get to the coffee pot first.
Yes.
Get a cup of coffee, sit down in silence for about 5 minutes before people banging on the windows. Hey, I gotta
That's
talk.
the 4th thing.
Give me a little time.
It's called savoring, right? We don't want to just down the cafe latte while we're doing emails. You want to savor the moment, right? And then move your body is the last one.
Good show.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. Be happy. Don't worry. Be happy. See you next week. This segment was brought to you by Gen Gators. We sink our teeth into service.